Hello, welcome to my channel again, or for the first time, whichever it is, welcome. So today I'm going to be talking about the one and only Sarah J Maas's book, Court of Thorns and Roses. So this is not the first Sarah J Maas book that I've read. I did read Thorn of Glass, which I also did a review for. But this one's sort of been on my radar because a lot of people seem to be talking about it, just like a lot of people seem to bring up Throne of Glass. I'm sorry. Thorns, Thrones, I don't know. Sarah J Maas just likes that kind of thing. Anyhow, I am going to do a review for this one because I read it and I loved it. Even though Sarah J Maas is known to be a controversial writer, mainly because, and I had no idea, like I heard it being said often, but I never really understood why she was considered to be controversial. Maybe because I didn't read that much, I didn't go that long into the series. I kind of stopped at book one, especially in Throne of Glass, and I just, didn't bother continuing, at least not yet. I mean, there's so many great YA books out there, so many great new fantasy titles coming out that, her books are so long, and they are great, but they're just too long, and I just want to, branch out and expand. With all that being said, the reason why Sarah J Maas is considered controversial was because she doesn't include that many POC characters in her novels, and when she does, they are sort of the background characters, and they often tend to be killed off to sort of promote the growth arc of the main character that usually is white, which is why a lot of people sort of dislike her as a writer. I haven't noticed it yet because, like I said, I didn't read that long into the series. I do understand how it can be very frustrating, especially nowadays when people definitely are seeking for representation. And I mean, hopefully Sarah J Maas will sort of pick up on that because I know that she has an adult fantasy book series coming out, so hopefully she'll implement that criticism and sort of, learn from her mistakes and kind of, invest more in the future. I guess only time will tell. But today we're talking about Court of Thorns and Roses. So, to be honest, it's very rare in my life as a reader that I really love a book and kind of really hate it at the same time, and I end up giving it 4 stars out of 5, and I gave this book 4 out of 5. And it's baffling to me because it seems like I'm not even in control of my own kind of thoughts when it comes to this book. I mean, okay, it sounds super weird. I am in control of my thoughts, but it never happened that I was so willing to be invested in the world and at the same time roll my eyes and sigh in exasperation. So this review is not spoiler free, so if you're one of the few people who haven't read it yet, or, kind of reading it now and don't really want to be like surprised or whatever, although to be honest, a lot of the things in this book are so predictable that, I mean, you don't honestly need to like watch this review and be like, oh my god, like that totally surprised me. But anyhow, you can stop watching right now. For those of you who actually don't mind the spoilers and already read it or kind of reading it or just, want to watch me like talk on and on and on about books, you're welcome to stay, of course. Everyone is welcome to stay. So I made a list, as I do, and it has the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the good are things that I actually liked about the novel and thought that are, brilliant. The bad are things that I, hated, but I was like, okay, it's tolerable. The ugly are things that I hated, thought were lame, wish that they were, replaced by something else or just plain excluded out of the book. So let's begin. For starters, there is a map. Obviously, there's a map. It's a Sarah J Maas book. Of course, there's going to be a map. And I'm a sucker for maps, like seriously. Even though this is a made-up land And, you know, it's not the most elaborate drawings ever. I still absolutely adore maps. Like, because I like looking at them and sort of have an idea of where things are taking place. Although it's not like, you know, a world map that I can be like, oh, this is the UK. Anyhow, so this takes place in a world that used to be ruled by fairies. There was a very brutal war. Fairies and humans kind of struck a bargain, struck a deal that the realm is going to be divided between humans and fairies. Fairies have their own world that is beautiful and magical for most part. The weather is really nice. Like, think about like California, basically. Kind of like California weather without minus the drought, like all year long. I mean, I would take that any day. And the human realm, you know, has all 4 seasons. The main character in this novel is a young girl named Pharaoh. She's, I believe, 18 or 17 years old. She came from a aristocratic family, a merchant family, that unfortunately has gone bankrupt due to bad investments. Her mom has passed away when Pharaoh was really young, and although Pharaoh is like the youngest of all the sisters, she for some reason made Pharaoh swear that she will take care of the family, provide for them for as long as she's alive. I mean, it's crazy. How the hell do you burden like a little child with something, you know, something so massive? But I don't know, that's what her mom did. So, Pharaoh's dad is kind of like useless. He has a bum leg because he got beaten up by some people, some like pretty bad debt collectors. And he feels very ashamed of everything. He doesn't have the, you know, mental strength to kind of, you know, provide for his family. Her 2 older sisters are a little bit delusional, so she has, like, one sister is very sort of cruel and beautiful and selfish, and I don't remember her name. And, I mean, they don't make huge appearances in the book, so whatever. The mid-sister is, like, really beautiful and gentle, and she cares about flowers and bunnies and singing birds and all that kind of stuff. And, I mean, they sort of live in the past, they're stuck in the past, they always, reminiscing about the good old days. They're very proud. They have a hard time admitting that they're actually like poor and broke and like, you know, dirt poor. They don't really want to acknowledge it. Pharaoh is the only one who sort of acknowledges it. She goes into the forest and she hunts. So you definitely have like Katniss Everdeen vibes going on. And Pharaoh is like the only one who seems to be doing anything for the family to kind of, you know, better their lives in a way. The other sisters just don't seem to care at all, which is very sad. So the Sarah J. Maas kind of portrays Pharaoh automatically as this, like, you know, deeply mistreated, miserable girl who only, you know, finds pleasure in the occasional drawing that she can. When she has enough money to buy paint, she kind of paints around the cottage that they now live in. So anyways, I delved too much into it. So the town they live in is like a miserable little village with no real roads. It kind of sucks. People mock them because they sort of used to be super, you know, they were very rich, very respected, and they sort of, you know, fell from grace, and now people basically just, you know, view them as basically the poorest people in the town. And of course it causes a great deal of shame, and etc, and it forces Pharaoh to go into the very dangerous forest that borderlines the fairy realms. And she kills a fairy, but she's unaware of it at first. Then she's sort of aware of it after she shoots an arrow and hits it. And when it happens, she's kind of weirded out by it, but whatever. Only later to have a fairy, a beast, a fairy in the shape of a beast, come to her house and whisk her away to fairyland, because basically what happens is that Pharaoh has to serve this High Lord in exchange for the fairy life that she took. So Pharaoh goes to this fairy realm, and of course she has a very hard time adjusting, understandably. And this is sort of where things get a little bit iffy for me. So the good things that I did like about it is that there's a lot of action. There's a lot of action sequences. There are passages, like long chapters, where a lot of stuff are going on and you're sort of at the edge of your seat. It's pretty cool. You wonder what's gonna happen next. The male leads are super hot. Talon, Lucian, Rhys, they're all like super hot. You know, they have hot butts, they have beautiful silky flowing hair. I mean, they're high fae. Seriously, they are. Also, this is something that some people might not like, but I really liked. It has like, it's adultish content. Meaning that it's not full-blown 50 Shades of Grey, but there's definitely like sexual content in it. There's like explicit moments in it. Some people might be like, you know, taken aback or feel like they're not ready or they don't want smut in their, you know, books. I wouldn't call it even smut. But I mean, some people are more sensitive to this kind of content than others. So if you're the kind of person who feels like, okay, this is definitely not for me, you know, it makes me feel uncomfortable, maybe you should not be reading this book, which is fine. Also, the plot is pretty tight and it's divided to separate, sort of, you know, separate chapters, separate parts, I would even say. There's the human realm, there's the fairy realm, there's the under the mountain kind of part. It's pretty cool. So, like I said, it's a pretty long book, so there's definitely, you know, space for it to happen, space for it to kind of, for the plot to unfold. Also, Pharaoh is likable as a protagonist. You can see her grow, you can see her develop as a character. You can see that she's a strong, self-reliant female protagonist. She doesn't really wait for the guy to save her, and if anything, she's the one who kind of goes and saves the guy at the end. Which is kind of refreshing, I would say. It's very empowering to read about her because she's so young, but she's very proactive, and you know, that makes her very sympathetic. She was proactive when it came to her family, she was proactive when it came to, you know, saving the people she loved, and I think that that's great. Also, the atmosphere was kind of chilly in that book. What I mean by chilly, I mean is that Sarah J. Maas actually managed to freak me out when it came to fairies. I'm not a huge, massive fantasy fan. I like it, but also it was only with Sarah J. Maas that I really got into that fairy kind of world where high lords, like high fae exist and stuff like that. My only encounter beforehand was basically through Lord of the Rings, and also, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, this book is definitely has a lot of Lord of the Rings elements in it. Like, when they were talking about the high fae lords, I was automatically thinking about, you know, Legolas and all of his, like, cronies and stuff like that. I'm sorry, his posse. Legolas is, like, my boy. He's, like, my favorite character in that trilogy. Anyhow, so Sarah J. Maas succeeded in freaking me out and never wanting to encounter a fairy in my life because they are creepy as hell. So congratulations, Sarah J. Maas, you've installed the fear in me that I did not have as a child, but now as an adult I am afraid of fairies. That's awesome. I'm gonna shelve it right next to my fear of clowns. The bad. Okay, so contrary, I would say this is kind of contradictory to what I said about the chapters that have a lot of action in them. The weird thing about this book is, the problem with this book, I would even say, is that maybe it's a little bit too long. And there are chapters where nothing really happens. Nothing happens that contributes to the plot. Like weird passages, weird chapters. There's a chapter where Pharaoh is like in a prison cell and she just listens to music and she's, you know, elevated and she's kind of becomes a little bit more optimistic because of the music that she hears. And she's like, oh, this is so great, I don't feel like I'm trapped underground anymore because I'm listening to this, you know, spiffy flute music. And there are parts when she drinks fairy wine and becomes super high and drunk on it and just dances, and we're told that she keeps dancing, and I'm like, why would I even care that she dances? Like, for sentences, like for paragraphs upon paragraphs describing how intoxicated she was, and how, you know, what a great dancer she is. Like, I cannot even imagine what kind of dance move she's pulling off. Like, this is so weird. It has zero contribution to the plot. It only makes me think that Sarah J. Maas really likes dancing, and I'm like, oh, good for you. Like, why would I care that you love dancing? I mean, but maybe it's a thing. I have no idea. Anyways, there are these passages, they are throughout the book, when I feel like these chapters could have been easily just like edited out, because honestly, like, I love Lord of the Rings, but reading the Lord of the Rings books was the kind of experience that I don't really want to repeat, because there were a lot of passages, like 3 pages dedicated to a hill. And I have a huge amount of respect for J.R.R. Tolkien. I think he's brilliant. But I don't want to read 3 pages of a description of a hill that nothing even happens on that freaking hill. Same thing can be said about this book. She gets drunk, she dances. We don't need chapters about her dancing while she's drunk. No offense, Pharaoh. I'm sure you're a great dancer, but still, you know? Alright. Other things. Okay, so there's this curse on Tamlin. Tamlin is the guy that, he's a high fae, that, he's super hot, obviously, and he's the high fae that, binds Pharaoh to him. So the silly thing is that he wears a mask on his face. That's right, you heard it here first. The curse, the court of Tamlin is cursed. We don't know who put the curse on them, they're not allowed to talk about it, but there's a mask on his face and on everyone else's faces, and they are basically not allowed to say why they are allowed to say why the masks are there, they're not allowed to say who put the masks on them. And I just found the whole mask premise so ridiculous. Even when Pharaoh and Talon have sex for the first time, he has that mask on his face, and I was like, seriously? That's like the silliest thing ever. Like, I wish the curse would have been like, you know, kind of like more impressive or creepier, or, I mean, they lose their magic, okay, that makes sense, and they are stuck with these dumbass masks on their faces, like, seriously? Okay, fine. Also, the showdown, the final showdown between Talon and Aramantha, it was kind of disappointing. I expected a little bit more, because she's this super cruel and vicious person, and Tamlin basically kind of just kills her with a sword, just plunges a sword through her forehead. And I'm just like, I don't know, I just expected her to confront Pharaoh. I expected there to be a showdown between her and Pharaoh, and instead it was Tamlin finally he takes off his mask, and of course his face is super hot underneath the mask, blah blah blah, whatever, totally unexpected. But the showdown was just so disappointing, especially considering that it was because of Pharaoh that Aramantha is now kind of like, you know, loses her power, loses her control over Tamlin. And instead, what happens is that you know, Tamlin is the one who kills her, and I found it super unsatisfying, and she died in such an easy way. I mean, I wish she would have like tried to escape, or maybe she was in the midst of escaping, but I don't know, it was just unfulfilling. Another thing that irritated me was, although it seems like Pharaoh has lost so much in her life, you kind of realize as the plot progresses that she didn't really lose anything. You know, she thinks at first that her family is suffering because she's gone, but her family's like doing so much better now that she's gone. Tamlin took care of them, he gave them a whole bunch of money, they're doing so great. She lives in this amazing court surrounded by all these fairies, she has like these luxurious dresses and a lot of food, and she never has to worry about anything. And even at the very end, it seems like, I mean, she kills 2 innocents, so I guess that's the sacrifice. But even when you think that she's about to kill Tamlin and she kills him, she doesn't. I mean, she kills him, but he doesn't die because... And this is the ugly part that I'm getting into. Tamlin has a heart of stone. This is something that Aramantha is unaware of. And this is something that I wish would have had more, would have been given more attention in the story. Why the hell does he have a heart of stone? How is he capable of living if he has a heart of stone? What? Why? I mean, and it's so convenient that he has a heart of stone, and when Pharaoh has to sacrifice him for the freedom of all the fairies that Aramantha has somehow managed to trap under her, you know, power, he doesn't die, so they can be together, obviously, because his heart is made of stone, so she cannot kill him. And I found that that was ridiculous. Also, the curse that Aramantha put on Tamlin is so specific that it's ridiculous. But what makes it even more ridiculous is the fact that it actually is broken. The curse is that a human girl who really hates fairies kills a fairy without having any remorse or regret, when I think the fairy is transformed or something like that, and then she is taken as a prisoner to the court of the High Fae Lord, and she has to fall in love with the High Lord. I mean, logically, there's no way in hell, and Talon was given 50 years to break this curse. Logically, under no circumstances was this curse ever possible to break. Because, come on. I mean, the only thing Aramantha forgot to add is that it was supposed to be a full moon in the middle of the month, in spring, or something like that. Like, seriously, it was ridiculously specific. I mean, I'm sure that the reason why she did it was because she knew that there's no way in hell he's gonna be able to break it. However, the fact that it is broken is what makes it so goddamn ridiculous. I mean, what are the odds of something like that happening? 0. Exactly. Tamlin and Pharaoh. It's not insta-love. Pharaoh does not fall in love with him. She hates him a lot at first. He has the hots for her, kind of. Seems like a lot of the Fae have the hots for her, obviously, because she's actually stunning and gorgeous, blah 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 blah, you know, the usual kind of shtick. She grows to lust after him. I mean, that kind of makes sense because he's super hot, and he's kind of violent, and he's hot and he's violent, so obviously, you know, you have Christian Grey vibes going on. So she kind of really wants him, and he wants her, and then it turns into love on her part. I have no idea how he feels. Sorry, there are motorcycles passing by. I have no idea how he feels, but definitely, I mean, the fact that they just, like, are so enormed with each other, the fact that this hate turns into love, this, like, I will die for you kind of love, was a little bit irritating, but, you know, whatever. I'm used to, like, there is no YA novel that does not have it. It's, like, no self-respecting YA novel will not have at least insta-love, you know, between the characters. I mean, it's a prerequisite. What's the point of writing a book if there is no insta-love, right? And the male lead has to be super hot. Otherwise, you know, what's the point of me reading the book? I mean, being sarcastic and all. Also, Rhys. Rhys is someone I probably would have liked better if he was the first kind of bad boy prototype I would have encountered in YA. But the YA world is overflowing with rocker bad boys with a troubled past and a heart of gold. It's boring by now. He is vicious and violent and ridiculously hot. And he has a soft spot for Pharaoh, and a lot of the things that he's doing because he's actually a really good guy, but he's trying to play a bad guy because he's playing all these court intrigue games, Versailles style. I don't know, it's a cliche. I'm so sorry. He's a hot character. I'm gonna give you that. He's hot. I understand why a lot of people root for him and Pharaoh to be together, because he is so much more interesting than Tam, because he also has this whole tortured, dressed in black kind of thing going on. And I mean, it's just unoriginal by now, and I'm like, of course. And of course he's actually a good guy, obviously. Like, it could not be any other way. He cannot just be like a, pardon my French, a dick throughout the whole thing. he has to be nice deep down inside. Otherwise, you know, you cannot really root for him, because if he's just pure evil and you like him, you're like Lord Voldemort or something. Another thing. So Pharaoh turns into a high fae after she sacrifices herself and dies, and she turns into a high fae, and I just thought it was ridiculous. I mean, seriously, this girl, she has too many perks going for her, and you're just turning her into a high fae on top of everything. Like, seriously, that's a little bit, I mean, that's a little bit too much. I mean, I would have been accepting if she was, you know, resuscitated, if she was being brought back to life. That makes sense in my world. But the fact that she turned into a high fae, that was a little bit irritating. That was a little bit Deus Ex Machina. That was a little bit great. Now she can spend the rest of her life in the fairy court being awesome and hanging out with Talon and the gang. Like, come on, like, seriously. I don't want her to be immortal. I want there to be a struggle. I want there to be issues, because life has issues. Life cannot be solved, like, you know, everything in life cannot be solved so easily. It's not like we have happy endings. We hardly ever do. And if we do, it's like very short-lived. Whatever. And lastly, everyone is picking their nails. This is something that I noticed in Throne of Glass. Everyone seems to be picking their nails all the time. What is this? The bad guys, the good guys, the badass guys, they're all picking their nails. It's a thing. It's like they cannot help themselves, especially the female protagonists. It seems like, you know, under hobby, you put picking my nails. I mean, really? Come on. Just no, stop picking your nails. Okay, and with all that being said, I gave this book 4 stars. It sounds like I actually hated it way more than I loved it, but it was actually a very enjoyable read, maybe because it's cheesy, and God knows I love cheesy. Sorry. I mean, it was a very well done cheesy. So anyways, these are my thoughts on Court of Thorns and Roses. To be honest, it reminded me a lot of Throne of Glass. Like, a lot. The only difference was the setting, and I mean, the protagonist was not as badass as Selena, but definitely very strong, like, vibes. Very strong Throne of Glass vibes. With all that being said, I do recommend reading it because it is ridiculously enjoyable. Maybe it's a guilty pleasure, maybe it's not a guilty pleasure, I cannot even categorize it, but it was freaking awesome. I enjoyed it. Not sure if I'm gonna read the rest of them. Maybe if I'll want to know what happens later on, I will. I appreciate the lack of insta-love. I don't appreciate a lot of the other things. But overall, highly enjoyable, very entertaining. So, yeah. You know, kind of read it at your own risk. Bye, and thank you for watching.